Hey guys, welcome to another episode of The Stuff of Legend. My name is D'Lo and I'm going to get into my theory video right now for Spider-Man Homecoming. So the first one I have is a minor theory. This is about Zendaya's character playing MJ, not playing Mary Jane, okay? So we know that Zendaya is a very popular individual right now. She is a dancer, she's a singer, she was a model. She even made her way onto Dancing with the Stars in the 16th season, and she's a very big hit on the Disney Channel. She has recently done the film The Greatest Showman with Hugh Jackman and Zac Efron. She's a very big name, and I would argue she is much more popular than a large amount of the other cast in Spider-Man Homecoming, especially among the other high school students. Marvel really picked a big name for this one, and I think they did that on purpose. They really wanted the character of Michelle Jones to be portrayed very professionally by a very well-known person to give her that extra edge of popularity and for people to be looking for her, to pay attention to her. In the months leading up to Spider-Man Homecoming, fans all over Facebook, Instagram, all kinds of social media, they were excited about Zendaya posting about Mary Jane and kind of teasing that, and then also with Tom Holland suggesting it's so great to be able to work with Zendaya and that kind of thing, and there was a really nice chemistry there. And then when the movie happens, she kind of flies under the radar. You know, she has like 3 quips, one in the beginning, one in the middle, one in the end, and then that scene at the end where she's like, oh, my friends call me MJ. So it was very easy to cut her out of the entire movie if you wanted. I mean, really, she wasn't very critical, except for she did have an interaction with Spider-Man at the Washington Monument, where she got to interact with Spider-Man and say, my friends are up there, they're inside the monument, you know, or they're in the elevator, you know, go help them, that kind of thing. Michelle Jones, Zendaya's character, was there for interaction with Spider-Man at the Washington Monument. She got to see Spider-Man be a hero. And then also she was there for Peter. She was there to see him attempt to grow a relationship with Liz, but then he has to choose being Spider-Man over pursuing a relationship with Liz. The important thing here is that Zendaya's character, Michelle, was there for that. She got to see that fail. She got to see him try and fail in that. And then we see by the end of the movie that she kind of does have that feeling for Peter. She's like, where are you going, Peter? And he's all, she's all, I'm just kidding, I don't really care. And she kind of looks back up at him. She does really care where he's going. She does care about Peter. She's interested in him. She's interested in his life. And we're gonna see that start to grow and start to spark in the next few films. Now, a lot of fans were like, that's not Mary Jane. I would argue, you're right, that's not Mary Jane. However, that doesn't mean that she can't be MJ. So just like how multiple people can wear a mask, multiple people can don the mantle of Batman, you know, they can take up that role. MJ is his ultimate love. And we know that Peter has multiple loves. He has Gwen Stacy, he's got Felicia Hardy, he's got, even among the X-Men, there's Kitty Pryde. You know, he's got a lot of these different love interests throughout the years. The biggest ones of all time is his love for Mary Jane. That's the one he's supposed to end up with. That's the goal. And so if it's not going to be Mary Jane, we've already seen on screen a very successful Mary Jane. We've already seen a very successful Gwen. I think Marvel Studios is playing a very smart move here by trying to disassociate. They don't want to reboot a character again. They're going to give you a new one, and they're going to have her fill the role of MJ. So, you know, the go get him tiger, you know, she knows his secret. She supports him being Spider-Man. Even in over their relationship sometimes, she understands how important it is to help out the people of New York City, and she's that ultimate partner to keep him being Spider-Man, even though he sometimes wants to quit. She's that push, and that's what MJ is. That's traditionally Mary Jane. But we see that, I think now, it's going to be Michelle Jones, and she's gonna take the MJ mantle, I think. And I think it could happen in the next film. I think it would most likely happen by the middle or the end of the 3rd film. That's my first theory. My second theory is the Iron Spider. So this one's a doozy, okay? So pay attention, try to keep up. You guys might have noticed that in my review of Spider-Man Homecoming, I left out a very important scene. It's the last scene where Tony takes Peter back to the new location for the Avengers Tower in upstate New York. And he's just kind of bragging on himself, but then he brags on Peter and how well he handled himself. And then he invites him to become a member of the Avengers. And after he does that, he shows that he has produced for him a new suit. And we all recognize this suit to be the Iron Spider armor. Peter looks at him, he's freaking out. Oh my gosh, this is awesome, this is awesome, this is great. And then he takes a moment to reflect and he says, you know what? It's okay, I'm good. And Tony's like, I'm good, what do you mean? And so he essentially just rejects the suit and says, I'm gonna be the small time hero. I'm gonna be the guy that looks out for the little people on the street. You guys can be the Avengers. Someone has to look out for the little guy. Tony's floored and stumped with the level of maturity that Peter is displaying, but the key here is that the suit goes nowhere. If you haven't seen the trailer for Infinity War.
Today's forecast is a 100% chance of spoilers.
In Infinity War, we see the Iron Spider suit in action. We know that Peter, in order to meet the greater level of threat that Thanos is bringing to Earth, he's gonna have to step up and take on that Iron Spider suit. He's not gonna keep the suit. No rendition of Peter Parker has ever kept the suit. That's something he got in Civil War and he eventually handed back to Tony. Tony ended up getting it back. It goes kind of into storage. And then someone else always comes along to take it up and pick it up as a secondary hero or a villain. So we know that in the comics, Stark was one that wore and developed the suit during testing and the making of the suit. Peter eventually got it. He wore it a little bit and then he eventually took it off and turned it back. Amadeus Cho in the animated series wore it for a bit. A supporting role was given in Spider-Man Homecoming, a major scene with lines that was a person that has worn the suit before, the Iron Spider armor. And that person, I'm gonna reveal in a second, but to get to that point, I need to give you another spoiler alert. This is not for Spider-Man Homecoming. This right here is for a comic series. If you are reading Marvel Legacy, Sinister Six Reborn.
Today's forecast is a 100% chance of spoilers.
In Marvel Legacy, Sinister Six Reborn, issue 234, Miles Morales is the Spider-Man in this storyline. And he gets his very first Sinister Six. And this consists of a character called Bombshell, they get a Lady Electro, they get Sandman, they get the Hobgoblin, they get a character called the Spot, which I'll refer to later. They also get their leader, the new Iron Spider. And this is very important because in the comic book, the issue 234, we find out that that person, the mysterious new Iron Spider, is none other than Aaron Davis, the uncle of Miles Morales. Aaron Davis is and was the Prowler. He was the ultimate version of the Prowler. Originally Hobie Brown, but now is Aaron Davis. He's the uncle of Miles Morales. Miles Morales is the future Spider-Man. And I think that we will see him eventually because they mentioned him in the garage scene where Spider-Man tracks Aaron Davis to that parking garage, meets him at his car, and he's like, I'm not a girl, I'm a boy, I mean a man. That scene is very critical because he's like, yeah, I agree with you, Spider-Man, the weapons, they gotta get off the street. I got a nephew that lives in Queens. That nephew is Miles. So that uncle, Prowler, played by Donald Glover, gets his armor from the black market and from stealing. In the Sinister Six Reborn series, the comic book series that I had just mentioned, he's wearing that Iron Spider suit from the Civil War, but it's slightly augmented, it's slightly modified. And then we know that in Spider-Man Homecoming, there are people that modify gear. It was the Vulture and the Tinkerer, but now it's just the Tinkerer. The Tinkerer's still out there. He's still making weapons. He's still selling. They still have other clients. So the Infinity War trailer shows the Iron Spider suit in action. But Spider-Man will eventually go back to the minor upgrade suit that was in Spider-Man Homecoming. Is it just going to sit there and collect dust? Or was it presented for a very specific reason? Will someone pick up the armor after him? Will Peter give it to someone he finds worthy? Miles isn't in the picture yet, and theoretically he's too young. Amadeus Cho would far outshine Peter in his intellect. Maybe Peter will give the suit back to Tony after Infinity War, only to be stolen by another criminal in transit. Or what I think is really going to happen is that perhaps the Iron Spider suit is going to be damaged in the battle with Thanos, and either parts or almost the entire thing is going to be removed from Peter to hopefully save his life, and it's going to be left there. Someone's going to pick it up. And who do I think is going to pick it up? Aaron Davis, the Prowler. He is a thief, he is a criminal. Even though we see a little bit of good intention there, we also know that in the comics, and especially the ones that they've been referring to in the Easter eggs, which I will get into, I will do a video for you guys, I think the Prowler does salvage the suit from the wreckage of the battle with Thanos in New York. Either the Prowler picks it up from the wreckage or he steals it in transit as it's being removed from the scene of the battle. He takes the salvaged Iron Spider suit to the Tinkerer to make some alterations, because we know that the Tinkerer is still doing business in New York as a weapons dealer. He was never caught, he was never arrested, they never closed that story, and I think that's going to be very important for the next installment of Spider-Man. And this brings me to my very next topic. Phineas Mason and the new Sinister Six. So Phineas Mason was a partner of Adrian Toomes, and he has a near superhuman level gift for understanding the workings of technology to repair, engineer, and upgrade tech. He partnered with Adrian Toomes to build the Vulture suit and use the salvaged Chitauri tech, and he upgraded the stolen concussion gauntlets that were used by Crossbones in Captain America Civil War. But where was the Tinkerer when Toomes brought the building down on Spider-Man? He was nowhere to be found. The entire desk and the whole building was already cleared out, which means that the Tinkerer is not only still out there, but the operation was moved so that he could continue dealing high-tech weapons to criminals. Remember in the beginning of Homecoming, he said business was good, but who were his customers? Who's buying all their weapons and tech? There must have been more than just Aaron Davis. My theory is that the Tinkerer has found a new base to operate out of and is selling weapons and tech to anyone who will buy. The Shocker is probably still assisting him running that tech to buyers and potential buyers so that they can make a lot more money and keep their criminal business running. We know from the comic books that the Tinkerer was responsible for repairing and rebuilding the damaged Scorpion tail for the Scorpion, for Mac Gargan, who we saw in Homecoming and in the end credit scene of Homecoming. It would make a lot of sense for them to continue this pattern since they've already set up both of these characters. We also know that the Chitauri tech is explosive when it comes in contact with radiation, demonstrated with Ned's backpack at the Washington Monument, and then also at the end when the Vulture suit was leaking radiation that eventually blew up and Spider-Man had to come and save him. Also, when Toomes was in that fight with the first Shocker, Jackson Bryce, he reaches over to the Tinkerer's desk and grabs a gun. He believes it's the anti-gravity gun. He aims and he shoots at Jackson Bryce and completely kills the man. But what does he say? I thought that was the anti-gravity gun. He thought it was anti-gravity tech, which means that they had been working on anti-gravity tech. We can assume that that tech was used in the Vulture suit for flight, as well as the turbines and the other things that were there to help with the lift. We also know that in the comics, the Tinkerer was responsible for building Rocket Racer's board, which is a hoverboard. It's anti-gravity tech. If you combine those elements, you could use that to build a very accurate Hobgoblin glider. I think that we're going to get to see the Hobgoblin. They've already teased the name Ned Leeds by making him the best friend of Peter Parker. Ned Leeds was married to Betty Brant at the Daily Bugle. Ned Leeds also worked for the Daily Bugle, but was at one point brainwashed to take over as the Hobgoblin for a time. So they've already teased Ned Leeds. I think that we're probably going to see the original Hobgoblin, the Roderick Kingsley Hobgoblin. Remember when the Tinkerer used a mini portal to phase through the container at his work and set something inside of a container? And then at the end, when they used that same technology to phase through the plane so that the Vulture could begin the heist, that tech, that phasing portal that it used to phase through solid matter, functions like a small antimatter window to move through space from one place to another by bypassing the matter in between. It's kind of like teleporting through a black hole, or spots. That technology could be setting us up for the Spot. The Spot is a villain that was in the Sinister Six Reborn comic along with Aaron Davis as the Iron Spider. They've already set him up with the technology to create those spots that he can use to phase through objects, to phase into banks and rob them, to steal, teleport away, to escape danger. I think that that could be a setup for the Spot, who is a member of the Reborn Sinister Six from the Legacy series with Miles Morales and Aaron Davis as the Iron Spider. If you go that route and you say that these technologies have already been setting up the Spot, Hobgoblin, and Aaron Davis as the Iron Spider, you have all 6 of your Sinister Six ready to go. That would be the complete Sinister Six right then and there. Everyone is there except for the Spot. The Spot would have to be introduced in the next film, adding the character as a henchman into the group and then giving him that technology, just like they took the technology from the now deceased Jackson Bryce and gave it to Herman Schultz. He's a small enough character that I think a lot of people wouldn't have a problem with you just adding him in that way. The other members who have already appeared in previous Spider-Man franchises, like Electro, Doc Ock, Sandman, and Green Goblin, it's possible that Marvel Studios doesn't want to repeat those characters because they've already been iterated multiple times for some of them, and then some of them having been teased. I think that they want to try to go a new route and introduce new people the same way that they did for Zendaya's character as MJ, but not Mary Jane. They gave her a new name, new character, new face. They want a fresh look. They don't want it to feel like a total reboot. They want to just move forward with new stories. So I think that that's very likely that they're going to avoid people like Doc Ock, Sandman, Electro. And so this brings me to my very last theory, and this is a big one. This is the biggest one, the one that gets me the most excited. Who bought the tower? So the Avengers Tower was sold. That was the entire premise of Spider-Man Homecoming. Tony Stark sells the tower. It's a big deal. The whole heist and everything, it all revolves around moving day, all of this stuff being transferred away from the Avengers Tower to a new location, Vulture swooping in and picking up that stuff. They never addressed who bought the tower. And so this is something that I think was a genius move on Marvel's part. And Marvel knew at the time what they were dealing with and what they wanted to acquire. And they had a multi-faced strategy for what that would look like. The first part is that they would try to make do with what they had at the time. Sony and Marvel, within that contract, then they were going to set up the Green Goblin, and this was going to be the new Oscorp Tower. Plan number one, where they're at right now with the deal with Sony, they have the ability to negotiate to add Green Goblin into the mix by adding Norman Osborn and Oscorp being the buyer. If they did this, then their setup for the Sinister Six would be very smooth. They would be able to just jump right in. They could even have the Tinkerer be working for Oscorp as an underground R&D contractor. It would be very smooth, and I think that that would be very successful. Everyone would be excited to see him again. But again, this would be the third iteration that they've had on the big screen, and I think that they're going to try to avoid this as long as possible, especially because the Green Goblin is his greatest foe. So this is something that they have to drag out. The love interest thing, they had the first movies, love interest completely fail, completely flop, and they're not afraid to do that in order to build a character in the long run, like Michelle Jones. That being said, I think that they don't want to do that as much as possible, and that's why, even though they have options available for the buyer for this tower, I think that they intentionally didn't say anything because they knew that they wanted to try to strike a deal with somebody. So let's go to the next phase. So again, if they weren't able to accomplish a big major deal with an outside source, they could at least reach out to some of their friends. The second part of my tower theory is this. Marvel Studios, they would reach out to their already existing friends at Netflix, and they would take those characters, namely Wilson Fisk, and they would have Wilson Fisk join the MCU on the big screen so that he could be a main villain for Spider-Man in the Homecoming trilogy and in the MCU moving forward. They would set it up as a new Fisk Tower, as he is probably just getting out of prison, or he's still in prison, and he's just going to use his resources and his connections and his strings to make that purchase while he's on the inside. So when he gets out, he has a whole new building ready to go and a new base of operations. It's going to be locked down, and we might even get to see characters like Alistair Smythe. We might get to see other characters there that were already tied in the comics and in the animated TV series, along with Vulture, Prowler, and a lot of other characters that we've loved and grown up with. Some of you guys might be newer to this, but that's why I'm here. That's why I'm sharing this with you. So Wilson Fisk would be awesome. Vincent D'Onofrio is an amazing actor. He killed it. He's actually one of my favorite villains in all of Marvel right now. That's my second thing right there, is I would really like to see that happen. I would like to see Wilson Fisk take the big bad overlord, literal kingpin, pulling all the strings and pushing all these other villains at Spider-Man on the streets in the low level. You know, you get back to that crime feel like we had in Daredevil, and maybe even we get a Daredevil crossover. That would be amazing, and I know that a lot of fans have been asking for that. So that, I think, would be a very viable option. Number 3. This is the biggest one, and I think this is where they're going to go. This is my great prediction. This is the prophecy. This is where it's all coming full circle. Back when Homecoming came out, Marvel Studios was already planning and thinking up a deal to propose to Fox. Fox Studios has the Fantastic Four rights, and they have the X-Men and a few other things. The Fantastic Four is already cameoed inside of Spider-Man Homecoming. The locker combination that Peter enters at his locker refers to the comic book where Spider-Man first comes back from space with the alien symbiote, and then he's struggling to get it off. He can't figure out what it is, so he goes to Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four. That's Mr. Fantastic, by the way. He goes to him at the Baxter Building. So he goes to the Baxter Building and he gets help from Reed, and Reed tells him it's a symbiote. And that's one of the very first, most important issues for the origin of Venom. This is a very big comic, not only for Venom and the Venom story, but also for Reed Richards. And it ties back to the Fantastic Four. We know that Marvel is thinking about the Fantastic Four because of this cameo, and they've been talking about it for a very long time. With the recent fail of Fant 4 Stick, they have now the ability to reacquire the Fantastic Four, and guess what, guys? They already did. Now that we have that deal done, Marvel wants to integrate Fantastic Four into the MCU. Now they have an option. The tower could now be the new Baxter Building. They could have Reed Richards purchase that tower, and this could be the new Fantastic Four intro, and he could take that mentor role after Infinity War. So Reed Richards could then come alongside Peter, which he has done in the comics. Peter goes to him for advice every now and again, like he did with the symbiote. This would be so cool to have the Fantastic Four in there. You'd have the Tinkerer here supplying weapons to all the Sinister Six. Spider-Man has a lot of tie-ins with the Fantastic Four in the comics and in the animated series. Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, and Spider-Man, and you get, you know, like all these crazy team-ups. It would just be literally fantastic. It would literally be fantastic to have that buyer be Reed Richards and make that the new Baxter building. It's very possible, very likely, and it would be such a sweet full circle, not only for Marvel Studios, but for all of us fans who have been crying out for this on the internet for so long. For 10 years. We've been begging, actually longer than that now. It's probably, I forget when the first Fantastic Four movie came out with Ian Gruffudd as Mr. Fantastic. I thought it was a fun film. It wasn't a great film. It wasn't a good movie by any means, but it was fun. I'm really excited because they are now part of Marvel. Marvel now can use them, and I believe that that is what's going to happen with the Tower in Homecoming. So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been my theory video. If you like it, please like it and share it with those you love. If you hated it, well, please share it with your enemies. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you have all of my new videos coming your way. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been another episode of The Stuff of Legend.